Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm the co-founder here at Ascend Finance. Ascend Finance's goal is to take complex bankruptcy terms such as Chapter 7, Chapter 13, Chapter 11, and simplify them into simple, human, understandable language. Understanding the differences between Chapter 7, Chapter 13, and Chapter 11 bankruptcy can be one of the most confusing topics. It is also a common question that we get almost every single day. Why is understanding the differences between Chapter 7, 13, and 11 so important? Well, one option can cost $1,500 and another option can cost you up to $40,000. We will cover you that more in this video later, but you can now see there is a big difference between the two options. So this is what we're going to cover. First, a Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 versus Chapter 11 bankruptcy overview. Next, we're going to cover the cost of Chapter 7, Chapter 13, and Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Third, we're going to cover the length of time of Chapter 7 bankruptcy and Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Fourth, we're going to talk about how your credit score and credit report are impacted in bankruptcy. Fifth, we're going to cover the pros and cons of bankruptcy. And finally, we're going to talk about the common question of whether you should file Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now you're probably looking at this video and thinking, how on earth am I going to get through all of this content? Because I honestly would not want to hear myself speak for over 10 minutes. So what we did is we put chapters in this video so that you can jump around to whatever information is most relevant and helpful to you. Before I begin, I also want to let you know that your situation is completely unique. And my goal is to answer all your questions, but if I don't, please comment below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. We've also built a Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator that I've included in the link below that can really help you understand the costs and differences for your specific situation. And if you're kind of looking at different options right now and want more information, feel free to subscribe as we make additional videos very often and that hopefully they'll be helpful to you. So first, let's get started. Let's go over an overview of Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 versus Chapter 11. And I can kind of break down a few things side by side so you can really help you understand sort of the differences between the three options. So first, Chapter 7 bankruptcy is fast. How fast is it? You can often receive discharge in as little as 90 days to 120 days or 4 months. Second, it's less expensive. It's one of the least expensive debt relief options. Third, you may lose assets, but many do not because of bankruptcy exemptions. I'll include a link in the description below about bankruptcy exemptions just to help you understand that. Fourth, often it's a flat attorney fee and it's paid before you file bankruptcy. Fifth, the Chapter 7 has a total filing cost of around $338. And sixth, qualification is often based on your household size, income, and the state in which you live. Our Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below can help you estimate whether you qualify because we just use the bankruptcy forms and the means testing data available on the United States Trustees website. And that's a completely free resource for you. Now, Chapter 13 bankruptcy is slow. A discharge can often happen between 36 months and 60 months, and that's just something important to understand. It's also more expensive. Generally, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy can cost between $2,500 and $6,000. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you can often keep your assets even if the equity is above the bankruptcy exemption. The attorney is often a flat fee. Some of it or all of it is paid in the Chapter 13 plan, so maybe you don't have the money up front, so you could pay some in the plan. The total filing cost is about $313. And many people qualify for Chapter 13 bankruptcy as long as they are under the debt limits. And the debt limits are quite high. It can be over $400,000 in unsecured debt. Now let's talk about Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is slow. It can take years, and it could take more than 1 year just to confirm your Chapter 11 payment plan. During that time, you may have to pay quarterly fees and file monthly reports. It's also the most expensive, and we'll cover the cost of that below. Now, Chapter 11 bankruptcy is often for businesses who would like to continue their operations or for individuals who have over $419,000 in unsecured debt or have over $1.2 million of secured debt. So just to kind of understand kind of who usually looks for that. So how much does Chapter 7, Chapter 13, and Chapter 11 cost? Understanding the cost of bankruptcy is hugely important because there's major differences here between the three different chapters. So it's it's really important to make sure you understand how the fees work in the long run. Now, the Chapter 7, Chapter 13, Chapter 11 fees may be dependent somewhat on where you live, the complexity of your case. So it's also important to know that our free Chapter 7 first Chapter 13 calculator below can definitely help you estimate based on where you live, the zip code, the exact cost of what it may be. So let's get right into the costs. How do the costs work? In a Chapter 7, it will often be a flat bankruptcy attorney fee if you choose to hire an attorney that ranges between $1,000 to $2,500, which sometimes includes the filing fee of $338. Make sure to ask the bankruptcy attorney when you're quoted fees if that fee that they're quoting you also covers the filing fee costs. Now, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, many attorneys take an upfront payment for a Chapter 13 bankruptcy and include the rest in the plan. And the Chapter 13 bankruptcy costs can range from $2,500 to $6,000, really depending on where you live. And another thing important to know is that there is a thing called a no-look fee which means that the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney in your area may be charged the exact same as all the people in that bankruptcy district. Now, one of the fees that is probably one of the most misunderstood fees is the Chapter 13 trustee fees. These fees are percentage based and they're included in the payment plan. Just for your reference, the Chapter 13 trustee fees can result in thousands of dollars in your plan. So I'm going to include a link that you can kind of estimate your Chapter 13 fees that could be helpful for you. Now, a Chapter 11 bankruptcy can cost you anywhere between $25,000 and $40,000 plus in attorney fees alone. And because Chapter 11 bankruptcy is not really applicable to many of the folks probably watching this video, I'm going to put a link in the description to an article that you can read that would probably be helpful just to talk about Chapter 11 bankruptcy and spend the rest of my time focusing on Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy, just because it's one of the most common bankruptcy for consumers. You might not be, and there's additional information for those. So one of the most important things to understand is which bankruptcy you're going to be placed in after you have that bankruptcy consultation. Let me take a real life example of a gal that I was communicating with from Alabama recently. I'll call her Tanya, but that's not her real name. So Tanya came to us by taking a Chapter 13 calculator because her Chapter 13 was being dismissed. Now, dismissal is not the goal of bankruptcy. Dismissal basically means that your creditors are coming after you again for the unpaid debt. So I asked Tanya some probing questions and found out the only reason she filed Chapter 13 bankruptcy was because the bankruptcy attorney said she had to pay $300 down and $120 per month for 3 years, or $1,300 up front for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Let's quickly do the math. She could pay $3,900 for over 3 years or $1,300 up front. Now, I'm not sure why the bankruptcy attorney didn't allow her to pay $300 up front and do the rest of the payments for the Chapter 7 bankruptcy in a payment plan, but that's a story for another time. So instead, Tanya paid $300 down and then about 10 months of $120. So a total of that she paid was about $1,500, which is actually more than the Chapter 7 bankruptcy would have been. And ultimately, she didn't get the debt relief she was looking for as her Chapter 13 bankruptcy was being dismissed. So what could have Tanya done in this situation? Tanya could have gotten another bankruptcy consultation from another attorney and asked whether that attorney would take payments before filing the Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Many attorneys take payments for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy as long as the fees are covered before the Chapter 7 bankruptcy is filed. So as I said, cost is very important, and understanding how much you're going to pay and whether the bankruptcy attorney takes payments and which bankruptcy you're in is really important question to ask your bankruptcy attorney. Now, like I said before, our free calculator below estimates those numbers and gives you that information directly. So our free calculator below also estimates that cost for you directly. So how long does a Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy take for you to receive debt freedom? In a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you generally get discharged within as little as 4 months, which is really, really quick. With a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it can often take 36 or 60 months to receive debt relief. Now, 36 months and 60 months are vastly different amount of time. So how do you decide if you're in a 36-month plan or a 60-month plan? And the answer is it really is based on your income in comparison to the median income in the state. Now, we take that consideration in the calculator below, so it will provide a term estimate of 36 or 60 months, but you can also find that information on the U.S. Trustee's website under the means testing piece for the most recent data available. Now that we covered these terms about Chapter 7 bankruptcy and Chapter 13 bankruptcy, let's talk a little bit about your credit score impact in both the Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Another common question I get is, how is your credit score and credit report impact in bankruptcy. And many people lump credit report and credit score in the same bucket, and they are very similar, but I'm going to discuss them a little bit differently for both Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy. In regards to your credit report, a Chapter 7 bankruptcy is on your credit report for 10 years, and Chapter 13 bankruptcy is on your credit report for 7 years. Often you may be able to get access to credit a lot sooner than that. And as the time goes on, it may show less and less residual effects of the bankruptcy. Some individuals say they can get a secured credit card in as little as a few weeks after filing bankruptcy and getting that bankruptcy discharge. Now, in regards to your credit score may drop in both a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. That said, one bankruptcy attorney that we work with actually says that sometimes your credit score could increase because it's basically wiping out a lot of those debts on there that are not making your credit score look good. So in regards to your credit score dropping, it really depends. It could go 100 points or 150 points below, but it really might depend on your starting point. And you may be wondering how soon you can buy a house or a car after bankruptcy. And these are really important questions. And I included a link in the description below that kind of helps you understand the timeline from buying a house and after bankruptcy. Next, we're going to cover the pros and cons of Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy, because these are going to be really essential to kind of helping you kind of weigh both options and deciding which option is best for you. So a pro in the Chapter 7 is that it's less expensive than the Chapter 13. It's also much faster. Chapter 7 bankruptcy, like we said, is a discharge generally within 4 months. In a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you can generally keep you may be able to keep your property as long as it's below the exemptions. A Chapter 7 bankruptcy can stop debt collection lawsuits and clear some of the deficiencies you have. Some of the cons is there are income requirements to qualify, like I discussed earlier in most situations. There also is that potential opportunity to lose property if you're you have equity way above your exemptions. Next, there is a negative credit report impact and potentially negative credit score impact. There's also non-dischargeable debt in bankruptcy, such as secured loans, potentially in some taxes. In a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, it is harder to prevent a foreclosure, which is definitely something to consider. Now, all right, now that we talked about the Chapter 7 pros and cons, let's talk about the Chapter 13 pros and cons. Let's start with the pros. First, you can save your home generally from foreclosure a lot of times. There's some sometimes better situations with how to deal with a second mortgage. There's also some potential favorable solutions with dealing with your tax debts and helping with your car payments, and also just potentially helping with domestic support payments that are behind. A Chapter 13 bankruptcy could potentially also stop eviction, and that's something to definitely consider when you're considering the Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Now, let's go over the cons. There is this credit report impact that's negative, and there could be a negative credit score impact. The con that there's definitely higher attorney fees. There is also low payment flexibility potentially versus something like a debt settlement program or a debt negotiation. And another con is the length of time, 3 to 5 year program generally, and that can be a lot of information that's going your way. So now the question is, should you file Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or Chapter 11 bankruptcy? In deciding which bankruptcy to file is ultimately your decision, and your decision is completely unique. So please add a comment below if you have any questions. Feel free to take our Chapter 7 versus Chapter 11, 13 calculator, or read our other articles related to Chapter 11 bankruptcy if that's really what you're looking for. And if you're interested in other videos like this, where we try to talk about just bankruptcy and helping you get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster, please feel free to subscribe, as we create a lot of content on a regular basis to help you really kind of understand your options. I hope this video has been really helpful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for watching.